Hello, and welcome back to Project Rejectus. Today, we will be going over the vast mountains of Glacially and seeing how the animals adapt to this new environment. Starting on Sepses, this continent is filled with mountains, so its obvious life would adapt to it quickly, starting with the Mislata growing in smaller, faster-growing colonies. The musculus quickly spread across the mountains, becoming a widespread plant. Herbivores could now have permanent populations in the mountains. One of these herbivores was the testrum. The testrum quickly took advantage of these new plants. The first adaptation they made for mountain life was growing a layer of white fur. Their smaller descendants, the monstant, were fast herbivores that looked for predators by standing on their hind legs before quickly running away to their hideouts. They used their front arms as their main way of protection, using them to smack away any predators. One of their descendants, the Monspius, favored the bipedal stance, hopping across the mountains. They had grown two small horns to quickly deter predators. They had also developed 3 fingers on each of their limbs, along with a longer tail, to help them maintain their balance on the steep mountain terrain. Another descendant of the monstant, the testum, went on a different route, sticking to walking on 4 legs. They strengthened their horns into a much stronger dome-like area they used to deter predators. This also made them very aggressive and territorial, as they often fought with others, or their kind, having their arms locked together in combat. Now, we've mentioned this predator enough, so let's go straight into it. As the testrum settled in the mountains, the fedorum followed. Their hoofed feet gave them a huge advantage, as they could navigate the rocky terrain like no other. Their descendants, the monterex, had gained a coat of fur. Similar to the monstant, their fur had a striped pattern across their body to act as camouflage. They were much faster than their ancestors. Along with a much longer tail for balance, they could chase down any herbivore, being similar to a snow leopard on Earth. That finishes it for Sepses, so now, it's time to move on to our next continent of Glanum. The caves the Rumsum lived in were close by mountains, and since their current environment was similar to the mountains, they didn't need to change much to survive in the mountains. This created their descendants, the Motrafalpins, much bigger than their ancestors. They gain more leaves to make use of the extra sunlight. They act as the main source of food for herbivores living in the mountains. The Voculus was attracted to this new environment, being already well adapted for cold temperatures. They thrived here. Their descendants, the Scames, were much smaller. They had made their defensive scales bigger, almost covering their whole body. They could roll up into a ball similar to an armadillo to defend themselves, or they would use their tusks to deter any predators that got too close. The Voga was another animal that traveled into this new area. They didn't need much change other. Their descendants, the Glimens, became gray to match their new rocky. They used this new environment, gave their gliding unparalleled advantage, as the steep cliffs have them plenty of room to glide away from predators. They kept the red color on their sides. Since it attracted females, they usually wrestled for mating rights, using their tusks to hurt each other. The Fodvum had followed these herbivores, acting as a small ambush predator. Their descendants, the Foraker, had gained stronger claws for better digging. They made complex burrows. They spent their entire lives in a single burrow, just waiting for any animal to walk near their burrows. They would then quickly drag them in, devouring their prey. They would only leave these burrows to mate. This lifestyle is very similar to the trapdoor spider of Earth. These weren't the only predators, as the Walrus had followed soon after to take their place as the apex predators. Their descendants, the Argenba, had gained a silver color scheme with spots to camouflage themselves with the mountains. They grew extremely large teeth on their mouths, specializing for taking down prey in one shot. Their own real competition is each other, so to protect their neck areas, they have grown a mane to soften any hit from their rivals. That finishes up Glanum, so it's now time for our final continent of Crescentia. Starting with the Cherba, as the mountains formed, they quickly adapted to it, becoming smaller and thinner. The Montgra spread throughout the mountain ranges. They grew much faster than their ancestors. All of these traits would allow herbivores to follow soon after, just like the other continents. The Magcio were one of the first to follow, already being so bulky. Their bodies could handle the colder temperatures even without fur, with a gray color that already camouflaged well with the mountains. Their descendants, the Prinibus, were already well adapted. During the colder months, food is more scarce, so they constantly compete for territory with more plants. By using their antler that grows in around this time, they fend off any rivals for a couple months until the cold season ends and their antlers fall off. The Duurus was another herbivore that settled on the mountains, becoming much smaller. Their descendants, the Plusta, grew a coat of feathers to keep themselves warm with thicker shells to protect themselves from predators due to them being much smaller than their giant cousins. The Fumum also followed, but instead of being a herbivore, they instead became carnivores, developing teeth and jaws on each of their mouths. Their descendants, the Acudon, made their mouths extremely strong. They chased prey much bigger than themselves. While their prey is usually younger animals, they can still hunt adult herbivores such as the Plusta. They swooped down following their prey until eventually grabbing them. They then picked them up high in the air, then throwing them off the mountain to kill their prey quickly. The last animal we will be going over today is a descendant of the Perposterna, followed into the mountains to take their place as the apex predator. The Abluntarannissa, while smaller, was much bulkier than their ancestors. To deal with the cold, they developed their own coat of feathers similar to their prey. To maintain their balance, they developed cling pads similar to geckos and chameleons on Earth, along with a claw on both of their legs to help latch onto their prey's back, injuring them quickly. Thank you all for watching until the end. A special thanks to Dinosaur Dude for making the animation in today's episode. If you want to help out like he does, or see what the next episode will look like, the link to the Discord will be in the description and comments. Goodbye for now. I will see you all next week, where we'll discuss how the islands of Glacially will look.